Keanu Reeves walked through the tall glass doors of his own hotel one quiet evening. He liked to come in without warning, dressed in simple clothes, no bodyguards, no fuss. He believed it kept everyone honest. But that night, something caught him off guard before he could even get to the front desk. Right in the center of the sleek marble lobby, a young family stood awkwardly by the check-in counter. The father clutched an old, worn-out duffel bag. The mother, looking tired but trying to smile, held the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6. The boy wore shoes that looked too big for his feet, the laces dragging on the floor. His eyes were wide, staring at the chandeliers above like they were stars he'd never seen. Keanu slowed down when he heard the laughter. To hotel clerks behind the counter were whispering to each other, pointing at the family when they thought the family couldn't see. Their fake smiles vanished the moment they turned away from the family and smirked at each other. One of them nudged the other and said just loud enough for Keanu to catch, "This isn't a soup kitchen, you know." Keanu felt a slow anger burn in his chest. He watched the father glance down, clearly embarrassed, trying to ignore the cruel giggles. The mother bent to whisper something to the boy, distracting him from the mocking looks. The boy tugged on his mother's hand, whispering, "Mama, are we not good enough to stay here?" Keanu's heart clenched. He took a step closer, but stopped when he saw the father speak up. In a soft, humble voice, the father said, "We saved for this, my son's birthday. He wanted to swim in a big pool like he saw on TV. Please, we don't need anything fancy." The clerk rolled his eyes and tapped on the keyboard with exaggerated slowness. "Your card was declined, sir," he said, loud enough for other guests in the lobby to hear. A couple passing by glanced at the family with pity before moving on quickly. Not wanting to get involved, Keanu clenched his fists. The manager on duty, a young man with slicked back hair and a name tag that screamed assistant manager more than it did leadership, stood a few feet away, pretending not to notice. He scrolled through his phone, oblivious or maybe just uncaring. The little boy's lower lip trembled. The mother squeezed her husband's hand. They looked like they wanted to disappear. Keanu knew that feeling. He'd seen it in the mirror once, years ago when he was nobody. When people laughed at him behind his back because he couldn't afford the right clothes or speak the right words. Keanu stepped forward. He pulled out his phone and quietly snapped a picture of the clerks. He wasn't going to cause a scene yet. He needed to see if there was any shred of decency left in these people. The father fumbled through his wallet, pulling out a few crumpled bills and a handful of coins. "Is there any room we can afford?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The clerk leaned back in his chair, stretching like he was bored. "Sir, this is the presidential hotel. We don't have cheap rooms. Maybe you can find a motel down the highway. They take cash." Keanu could feel the tension in the air. Other guests had started to stare. The mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she kept her chin up for her son. The boy didn't understand money, but he understood shame. He tugged at his father's sleeve, whispering, "Dad, can we go home? I don't want the pool anymore." Keanu's jaw tightened. He remembered every moment he'd been dismissed like that. The memories were raw and alive inside him. He took a deep breath, knowing this moment was going to be more than just about a rude clerk and a poor family. It was about respect. It was about never letting people feel small. He stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on the father's shoulder. The man turned, surprised to see Keanu Reeves standing there, a kind smile breaking the tension. "Sir, may I help?" Keanu asked softly. The father blinked, confused. He looked like he recognized Keanu, but couldn't believe he was real. Keanu turned to the clerks, his voice still calm but firm. "Is there a problem with this family's reservation?" The clerk stammered, his face turning pale. "Mr. Reeves, we didn't know you were here tonight." Keanu ignored the apology. He knelt down to the boy's level, looking him in the eyes. "Do you like swimming pools?" he asked. The boy nodded shyly. "Good, because tonight you're going to swim in the biggest one in the city." He stood up and faced the entire lobby, his voice louder now. "This family will have the presidential suite, free of charge, and they'll have dinner on the house. Is that clear?" The clerks froze. The manager snapped out of his phone trance. his eyes wide. "Mr. Reeves, we can arrange that, sir, right away." Keanu cut him off with a stare that silenced the entire lobby. "And tomorrow morning," he continued, "there will be a meeting with the entire staff. I want everyone to remember that kindness costs nothing but means everything." The family stood speechless. The mother covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling over. The father tried to protest, but Keanu shook his head. "You deserve to be here," he said. "No one should make you feel like you don't." The boy grinned, holding up 3 fingers. "I'm turning 6, he squeaked. Keanu laughed and ruffled his hair. "Then you get 6 scoops of ice cream tonight." As the family was led away by the now suddenly polite clerks, Keanu stayed behind for a moment, watching them. He could feel the eyes of the other guests on him, some embarrassed, some inspired. In that moment, Keanu knew he wasn't just changing the night for that family. He was reminding everyone in that marble lobby, including himself, that respect, humility, and kindness were the true luxuries in life. As the glass doors slid shut behind him, he promised himself that this was only the beginning. The next morning, the sun shone through the tall windows of the hotel's grand lobby, casting warm light on the polished marble floors. It should have felt peaceful, but a quiet tension buzzed in the air. Word of what Keanu Reeves did the night before had spread. Faster than the morning coffee line, that housekeeping staff whispered in the hallways. Waiters in crisp uniforms looked at each other with wide eyes. Even the bellboys, who usually kept to themselves, talked in hushed tones near the luggage carts. Everyone knew there was going to be a meeting. Everyone also knew that when Keanu Reeves asked for a meeting, you showed up. Keanu arrived early. He didn't stand on a stage or behind a fancy podium. He stood in the middle of the largest conference room, sleeves rolled up, holding a simple notebook in his hand. He looked just like any other employee, except for the quiet strength in his eyes. As the staff filed in, some avoided his gaze, especially the clerks from the night before. They stood near the back, shifting from foot to foot, faces pale. The assistant manager looked like he hadn't slept at all. When the room settled, Keanu cleared his throat. His voice was calm, but carried through the space like a steady heartbeat. "I want to tell you a story," he began. People leaned forward, curious. They expected anger or scolding, but instead, they heard his voice soften. "Years ago," Keanu said, "before movies, before the fame, I was just a kid with a suitcase that barely closed. I stayed in places where people made me feel small, like I didn't belong. I promised myself that if I ever owned something like this hotel, no one would ever feel that way again." He paused, scanning the faces. Some looked guilty, others ashamed. A few even looked inspired. "Last night," he continued, "I saw a family trying to give their son a memory. They didn't ask for pity. They didn't ask for charity. They asked for respect. And we failed them." His words hung heavy in the air. The 2 clerks from the night before lowered their heads. Keanu turned to them, but his eyes held no cruelty, only disappointment. "We don't get to decide who is worthy of kindness," he said. "We don't know what people have gone through to stand at this counter, to ask for a key to a room. We don't know if it's their first vacation in years, or if they've sold something precious just to make this trip happen for their child." He took a step closer to the clerks. "We are not gatekeepers of dreams. We are guardians of them." The room was silent. A young maid near the front wiped away a tear. The head chef, a big man with rough hands, nodded slowly, his eyes soft. Keanu opened his notebook and read a few names aloud. "Some of you have gone above and beyond. You've helped guests when they were stranded in storms. You've stayed late to comfort an elderly couple who lost their luggage. You brought food to a sick guest's room when no one asked you to." He looked up, his eyes warm. "That's who we are supposed to be." Then his tone changed, just a hint sharper. "But for those who laughed at that family last night, you have a choice. You can stay and change, or you can leave. But if you stay, you will never treat another guest like that again." The room seemed to breathe again. The clerks looked up, eyes wide, realizing they still had a chance. Keanu closed his notebook. "Today, that family is having breakfast in the rooftop garden. Their boy is playing in the pool. They are not thinking about what happened last night. They are building a good memory, the one they came here for. And that's because they deserve it." He let out a slow breath, the fire in his words giving way to something gentler. We can't undo every wrong in this world, but here under this roof, we can make sure respect, humility, and kindness are not optional. They are our promise. He clapped his hands together once, lightly. Now, go out there and make sure every guest feels like family, because they are. The staff began to applaud, softly at first, then louder. It wasn't forced. It came from a place inside them that remembered why they chose this work, to serve, to care, to lift people up. As they filed out, Keanu stayed behind with the two clerks. He didn't yell, he didn't humiliate. Instead, he talked with them quietly, asking them what made them act the way they did. He listened. He gave them a chance to be better. When the meeting ended, Keanu walked through the halls of his hotel like any other guest, but everywhere he went, people greeted him with more than just polite nods. They greeted him with a quiet vow to do better. And while the family enjoyed their breakfast under the open sky, Keanu knew this wasn't just about one night. It was about changing how people saw each other, one small act at a time. He stood at the edge of the pool, watching the little boy splash and laugh, the parents holding hands nearby. They looked up, saw him, and smiled with a gratitude too deep for words. Keanu nodded back, a small smile on his lips. He felt lighter, stronger, ready for whatever the day would bring next. The morning turned into afternoon, and the rooftop garden was now buzzing with life. Sunlight bounced off the pool's clear water, laughter echoing against the glass railings. The humble family, once made to feel small in the lobby, now felt like they belonged. They didn't know how much they had changed the spirit of the entire hotel overnight. Keanu sat quietly at a table not far from them. He didn't want to intrude on their moment. He watched the boy race from one end of the pool to the other, splashing water that sparkled like tiny diamonds in the sun. The parents sat on loungers, holding hands, whispering to each other with shy, relieved smiles. Every so often, the boy would wave to Keanu, and Keanu would wave back with a grin that made the boy laugh even harder. Near the bar, the two clerks from the night before stood beside the assistant manager. They looked different today, not in their clothes, but in their eyes. They carried trays of fresh juice and sandwiches to the family without being asked. Each small act an attempt to wash away the bitterness of their earlier cruelty. They knew they had a long way to go to earn trust again, but small steps were where it had to begin. Keanu sipped his tea, feeling the breeze on his face, when a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Reeves." He turned to see the assistant manager standing there, looking more nervous than ever. His tie was crooked, his hands fidgeting with a small notepad. "Yes?" Keanu asked, his tone gentle but watchful. The manager cleared his throat. I just wanted to say thank you for what you said this morning. I forgot why I started working in hospitality. It wasn't to climb a ladder, it was to help people." Keanu studied him for a moment, and the young man looked at his shoes before meeting Keanu's eyes. "And I want to be better, not just for you, but for everyone who walks through those doors." Keanu nodded. "Good. Then start today. Help the people who need it the most, not just the ones who tip the most." The manager's shoulders seemed to settle, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. "I will," he promised. Keanu stood up and patted his shoulder. "And remember, people never forget how you make them feel." He left the manager standing there, thoughtful and a bit lighter. As Keanu turned back to his table, he noticed an elderly couple at the far corner of the garden. They sat alone, their table empty except for 2 cups of cooling coffee. They looked a bit lost, glancing at the menu with furrowed brows. No one seemed to notice them. Keanu didn't hesitate. He walked over, his steps quiet but firm. "Good afternoon," he said kindly. "May I sit?" The old woman looked up, surprised. Her husband blinked twice as if he couldn't believe who was standing in front of him. "You're Keanu Reeves," the man whispered, a shy smile breaking through his wrinkled face. Keanu chuckled. "I am, but today I'm just someone who wants to make sure you're taken care of." The old woman sighed. "We tried to order, but the waiter is busy. We didn't want to bother him." Keanu looked around. The waiters were indeed busy, rushing from table to table, but no one should ever feel invisible. He waved over the assistant manager, who hurried over instantly. "These lovely guests need help," Keanu said. "Take good care of them, and bring them the chef's special on the house." The couple's eyes widened. "Oh no, we couldn't," the old man began, but Keanu interrupted with a warm smile. "You can, because you deserve it." The old woman touched his hand, her eyes shimmering. "Thank you. You remind us that the world still has good people." Keanu squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for reminding me why I do what I do." He stood and looked around the garden. He could feel it, the shift, a spark of kindness here, a gesture of respect there. People who worked here were watching him, but more importantly, they were watching each other. They were learning. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the humble family gathered their things to leave the pool. The little boy ran up to Keanu, his hair still wet and wild from hours of swimming. He held up a soggy paper cup filled with melting ice cream. "Mr. Keanu, want some?" he said, his grin toothy and wide. Keanu laughed, crouching to the boy's level. "Thank you, buddy, but that's all for you. Happy birthday." The boy's parents joined them, faces flushed with happiness and something deeper, relief that their son would remember this day, not for the humiliation in the lobby, but for the kindness that washed it away. The father held out his hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. "You didn't have to." "I did," Keanu interrupted softly, "because no one should ever feel like they don't belong." The family hugged him, all three of them at once, before they left, waving back as they disappeared into the golden hallway, leaving behind echoes of laughter and something better than wealth, dignity. Keanu stood alone for a moment, watching the door close behind them. He knew he had made a difference for one family, but there were so many more who would walk through those glass doors, people with their own quiet struggles, their own invisible battles. He promised himself, standing under the soft glow of the rooftop lights, that he'd keep watching, keep listening, and keep reminding everyone in that hotel that respect, humility, and kindness were worth more than any marble floor or crystal chandelier. And tomorrow, he would be ready to do it all again. The next day dawned with a gentle drizzle, soft rain, tapping against the tall windows of the hotel lobby. The city outside seemed hushed, as if it, too, was waiting to see what would unfold inside these walls. Keanu Reeves arrived early again, slipping through a side entrance unnoticed by most. He preferred it that way, no cameras, no fuss, just his eyes open to the small moments that often went unseen. Today, he planned to check on every corner of the hotel, the parts guests rarely thought about, but which carried the heart of the place. He started in the laundry room, where the air smelled of fresh linen and warm steam. Workers moved quickly between piles of sheets, uniforms, and towels, their faces tired but focused. He spotted Marta, an older woman who had worked at the hotel for over 20 years. She was short, her hair tied in a neat bun, her hands rough, from endless hours folding sheets until they were crisp and perfect. Yet her eyes were kind, her smile patient. "Good morning, Marta," Keanu said softly, stepping into the hum of the laundry machines. Marta looked up, surprised, a strip of linen draped over her arm. "Mr. Reeves, you shouldn't be down here. This is not for someone like you." Keanu chuckled, taking the linen from her gently and folding it himself. "And yet, here I am. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" she asked, confused. "For what?" Keanu placed the neatly folded sheet on the pile. "For caring when no one sees you. For making sure every guest sleeps on clean sheets. For being the reason a tired traveler wakes up feeling rested." Marta's eyes glistened, her lips trembling. "No one ever thanks us. We are just the hands behind the curtain." Keanu shook his head. "You are the backbone. Without you, this place would fall apart." He spent the next hour there, listening to stories from Marta and the other laundry workers, how they missed birthdays, worked double shifts when the hotel was full, and how they comforted each other when life was hard. He promised them better equipment and an extra pair of hands when they needed it most. Simple things, but things that made them feel seen. When he finally left the laundry room, he found himself in the back hallways near the staff break room. The walls here were plain, the floor scuffed from years of footsteps, yet this was where The real heartbeat of the hotel pulsed. He paused when he heard muffled crying. He followed the sound and found a young bellboy named Eric sitting on a crate, his head in his hands. His uniform looked too big, his eyes red from tears. Keanu crouched down. "Hey, Eric." The boy startled, wiping his face quickly. "Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry. I'll get back to work." "Don't rush," Keanu said, his voice calm and kind. "Tell me what's wrong." Eric hesitated, then the words tumbled out. His father was sick, the hospital bills were piling up, and he'd been sending every tip home, skipping meals to save money. He had just been scolded by a guest for being too slow with the bags. The final blow that cracked him open. Keanu listened, not interrupting once. When Eric finally fell silent, exhausted, Keanu put a hand on his shoulder. "You are stronger than you think," he said. "You shouldn't have to carry this alone." Eric looked up, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "Come with me," Keanu said. He led Eric through the back halls and into the lobby, where he asked the assistant manager to join them. Keanu made it clear that the hotel's staff fund, something that had sat untouched for years, would now help workers like Eric when life knocked them down. No more shame, no more pretending they were fine when they weren't. The assistant manager nodded, writing it all down. Eric looked like he was trying not to cry again. But this time it wasn't from despair, it was relief. "Thank you," Eric whispered. "No one has ever done something like this for me." Keanu smiled. "You do so much for everyone else. It's time someone did something for you." News of this small act spread quickly. By lunch, staff members from housekeeping to kitchen crew knew that their struggles weren't invisible anymore. They knew their boss didn't just see polished shoes and shiny lobbies. He saw them. The people who made it all work. Later that afternoon, Keanu took a slow walk through the lobby. He stopped to help a young couple who looked lost and overwhelmed. They were visiting from another country, the language barrier leaving them confused. Instead of calling someone else, Keanu used his own broken phrases and warm gestures to guide them to their room. He carried their bags himself, much to their disbelief. As he rode the elevator down alone, Keanu caught his reflection in the mirrored doors. He saw a man who had once been overlooked, once mocked for not fitting in. He knew that pain. That was why he vowed never to let anyone else feel it within these walls. He stepped out into the bustling lobby just as Marta emerged from a side door, holding a fresh bundle of linen. She saw him and gave him a small, proud nod, a silent promise that she, too, would carry forward this new spirit of respect and care. Keanu paused for a moment, taking it all in. The lobby that felt warmer, the staff that stood taller, the guests who were beginning to feel the difference in the air. And in that quiet moment, Keanu Reeves knew this was not the end of the change. It was just the beginning. The evening sky painted soft streaks of pink and gold across the tall glass windows of the presidential hotel. The lobby glowed warmer than usual, not just from the lights but from something deeper, a quiet sense of respect that had begun to take root over these past days. Keanu Reeves stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they came and went. Some recognized him instantly. Others just saw a kind man with gentle eyes who helped them with bags or directions. He liked that. He liked being seen not as a movie star, but as a human being doing simple, good things. He was about to step away when a sudden commotion near the revolving doors caught his attention. He turned and saw an older man in a faded coat standing awkwardly just inside the entrance. Beside him was a girl, maybe 16, clinging to an old violin case like it was her lifeline. Her shoes were worn, her coat thin for the chilly night air. Near them stood two guests, a sharply dressed businessman and a woman dripping in jewelry. They were sneering at the old man and his granddaughter. Keanu heard the businessman's voice slice through the lobby's calm. "They let people like you in here now," the man scoffed. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a charity house." The girl flinched, clutching her violin tighter. The grandfather tried to speak, his voice shaking. We are just here to see if my granddaughter can play for guests in the lounge. She's very good, sir. Just for a few coins." The woman with the jewels let out a sharp laugh. "A beggar's concert, how pathetic." The words stabbed, through the air like cold wind. Keanu felt that old, familiar anger rise in his chest. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm as stone. "Excuse me." The businessman turned, startled. His smug expression faded when he realized who stood before him. "Mr. Reeves, we didn't mean anything. It's just—" Keanu held up a hand. "That's enough. Kindness is not optional here. Not anymore." He turned to the girl and her grandfather. His voice softened, his eyes kind. "You wanted to play? The lounge is yours tonight." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? You mean it?" Keanu smiled. "I'd be honored to listen." He led them to the hotel's elegant lounge. Guests looked up as the girl opened her battered case, pulling out a violin with strings that looked tired but still strong. Her hands trembled at first, but when she placed the bow to the strings, the notes rose like a prayer, sweet, clear, and pure, the kind of music that made people stop talking, made them listen with their hearts. The old man stood behind her, his hands folded tight, his eyes wet with pride. Keanu sat front and center, his eyes never leaving the girl's face. He saw her fear melt away, replaced by something beautiful, confidence, hope. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a heartbeat before a wave of applause crashed around her. Some people rose to their feet. The same guests who had looked past her before now clapped so hard their hands turned red. Keanu stood, pulling a crisp envelope from his jacket. He slipped it into the grandfather's hand. "This is for you both. A safe place to stay tonight. And tomorrow, we'll find you a place to play where people pay to hear your gift." The old man's voice cracked. "Why? Why would you do this for us?" Keanu looked at them both, his voice gentle. "Because once, someone believed in me when I had nothing. I'm just passing that on." As they hugged him, Keanu felt the eyes of the businessman and the jeweled woman still on him. He turned to them, not with anger but with calm truth. "Money doesn't make you rich," he said. "How you treat people does." The woman looked away, her cheeks flushed with shame. The businessman mumbled an apology, but Keanu didn't need it. The lesson had already landed where it needed to. After the small concert, the girl and her grandfather were shown to a cozy room. Upstairs, warm beds waiting for them. The hotel staff, once cold and distant, now offered them warm tea and gentle smiles. Keanu walked through the halls after, every step echoing with the music that still lingered in his ears. He saw Marta in the hallway, carrying fresh towels. She winked at him, whispering, "You did good tonight, boss." He grinned. "We did good." In the break room, Eric sat with a sandwich in hand, chatting and laughing with other bellboys. The assistant manager was there too, listening to their ideas about how to keep the hotel's promise alive, a promise of respect, humility, and kindness. Keanu knew then that what had begun with one family had grown into something larger. This hotel wasn't just a place with fancy rooms and shiny floors. It was becoming a place where people felt safe to be human, where dignity lived in every hallway, every corner, every warm hello. As he stepped out onto the balcony, cool night air brushed against his face. He looked out over the city lights, feeling something settle deep inside him, not pride, not satisfaction, but a gentle, unshakable belief that small acts of respect could change lives, and he would keep proving it, one person at a time. The next morning, the city woke up to soft golden light spilling over rooftops and into the glass windows of the presidential hotel. Inside, something felt different, like the walls themselves now carried whispers of kindness. The air wasn't heavy with rules and status anymore. It was warm with possibility. KeanuReeves walked the lobby slowly, his hands tucked into his pockets, his eyes taking in every detail. Last night's violin music still hummed in his mind. He wondered where the girl and her grandfather were now. He hoped they were sleeping soundly in warm beds, their worries softened for at least one night. He paused near the check-in counter where it had all begun, where a humble family had been laughed at just days before. Today, there were no smirks, no mocking whispers. Instead, the clerks greeted guests with genuine smiles. One young woman leaned over the counter, handing a small toy to a fussy child whose mother looked exhausted. The toy made the child giggle. The mother mouthed thank you with eyes that said so much more. Keanu's chest tightened with quiet pride. He turned to see Eric, the young bellboy, standing tall near the luggage carts. He was still tired, dark circles under his eyes, but he carried himself differently now. When an elderly guest struggled with heavy bags, Eric rushed forward, not just to help but to ask about her journey, to listen to her stories. She beamed at him like he was her own grandson. And maybe, for that moment, he was. Keanu moved on, taking the back hallway that led to the kitchen. The hum of pots and pans and the smell of fresh bread wrapped around him like a warm blanket. Inside, the head chef was talking with a line cook who had been struggling to keep up. Instead of barking orders, the chef guided his hands, showed him how to slice quicker, safer, better. There was no yelling today, only patience. Marta, the laundry worker with kind eyes, appeared at the kitchen door. She held a tray of fresh pastries. "For you," she said shyly to the cooks. "Because you feed everyone else, someone should feed you too." Keanu watched her for a moment. When she caught his eye, she winked. He gave her a thumbs up. This was what respect looked like. A chain reaction, one good thing sparking another. Later, in the staff lounge, the assistant manager stood at the front, a whiteboard behind him. He was leading a new meeting, not because Keanu told him to, but because he wanted to. They were brainstorming ideas on how to help staff in emergencies, how to offer guests more warmth without costing more money. It was simple but powerful. People looking out for each other. Keanu didn't interrupt. He slipped out quietly, knowing they were strong enough to carry this forward. He made his way to the rooftop garden one last time. The humble family from that first night had checked out early in the morning. They left behind a small thank you note, written in shaky handwriting by the little boy. "Thank you for the best birthday. I will never forget swimming in the sky." Keanu folded the note carefully, placing it in his pocket like a tiny treasure. He sat on one of the lounge chairs, breathing in the fresh morning air. The city stretched below him, busy and indifferent. But up here, he felt something solid, a reminder that every person who crossed these doors deserved to feel seen. As he sat there, the violin girl and her grandfather appeared at the rooftop entrance. They looked cleaner now, brighter. The girl clutched a small envelope of money, tips from the night before. The grandfather held up a simple flyer for an audition at a local music school. "Someone here gave us this," he said, eyes shining. "She has a chance now, because you let her play." Keanu stood and hugged them both. "No," he said, his voice full of quiet warmth, "because she had the courage to play. I just made sure people listened." The girl beamed at him, eyes full of hope. She pulled out her violin and began to play again, just for him this time. The notes floated up into the morning sky, sweet and strong, carrying the promise of better days. Staff members passing by paused to listen. Some leaned on brooms, others balanced trays. But for those few minutes, they were all the same. People sharing a moment of pure, simple beauty. When the last note faded, Keanu clapped softly. "Keep playing," he told her, "wherever you go." The girl nodded, hugging her grandfather close. As they left, Keanu stood at the glass railing, watching the city breathe. He knew the world outside these walls wouldn't always be kind. It would still have laughter in the wrong places, cruelty in hidden corners. But inside this hotel, things had changed. He turned to see Eric, Marta, the assistant manager, and so many others watching him from the doorway. They didn't need a speech this time. They didn't need more rules or reminders. They just needed to know he believed in them. Keanu raised his hand in a small wave. They waved back. He looked out over the city one last time that morning, his heart calm. Respect, humility, kindness. These were not luxuries. They were choices, ones they would keep making. One guest, one family, one stranger at a time. And as long as he walked these halls, Keanu Reeves promised himself he would keep proving it.